Within merely 16 episodes, the flashback of Kozuki Oden briefly made me forget that he wasn't the protagonist of our story. Through fleshing out the mysterious daimyo of Kuri, we learned just not the history of the Kozuki family, but through the flashback we further understood Whitebeard, Roger, Shanks, Teach, the Akazaya 9, and the current shogun within Orochi. The exposition of Oden aids to further world build the already in-depth world of One Piece, and it finally brings to us, the audience, further attachment to some of these legendary figures and fledglings who'd eventually grow into Yonko. The flashback all takes place throughout Oden's journal, and Oden wrote in his journal because he believed all adventurers detail their travels and their stories, which is something I do as well. There has almost never been a character within storytelling who has encapsulated me as much as Oden has, and having him introduced into the story sets the entire tone for Act 3 of Wano and exacerbates our emotions towards the conflict within Wano Kuni. Upon his introduction, we see Oden as a reckless and brash young individual refusing to submit to anyone, instead wanting to be free from political attachment, expectation, the confines of his country. Casually as a youth, he'd burn down casinos, form a harem in the mountain, and fight freely with little consequence of his actions. An individual who lived entirely present, with immense charisma. So much charisma that when he'd be seen in the streets, we'd see men tell other men to hide their wives and daughters, as the magnetism of Oden would draw in their women and they'd join his harem. The conceptualization of Oden is the embodiment of a Chad within this story. He simply doesn't care what others think, and he lives for himself, doing what he pleases, and he never compares himself to others. I believe this is what many of us readers and watchers aspire to live like, being entirely free and not caring what the world thinks, which is one of the many reasons I think me as a reader was also so drawn to his charisma. The growth of Oden from his reckless youth to an eventual daimyo of Kuri was truly a coming into manhood story as he grew in knowledge. His always pure heart was able to shine as he'd take Kuri from a place of lawlessness to a beautifully developed city. Through these ventures, Oden gathers loyal retainers who serve and follow Oden on their own accord. They too were drawn to his magnetism and charisma, and Oden's will now became theirs. This gives us exposition to the Akazaya 9 we now know within the story, and it shows us their origin, their growth, and why they are unwillingly loyal to the Kozuki family. Prior to this, the Akazaya 9 were characters I enjoyed and I was a fan of, but the depth of their loyalty I now finally understood. Oden, still desiring to be free, eventually encounters the Whitebeard pirates who wash ashore, and Oden, in Oden-like fashion, attacks Whitebeard immediately with a smile on his face. And due to Whitebeard's strength, Oden asks to join him and go along with him on his journeys throughout the sea. Despite Whitebeard's denial of this, Oden joins the Whitebeard pirates, and in doing so withstood a trial of holding onto a rope on the ship for an exuberant amount of time, and in doing so garnered the respect and admiration of Whitebeard and his crew. Before the trial ends, he encounters a woman being attacked by pirates, and this woman being Toki, who was mentioned by Momo and Kinemon, but now we see firsthand how she comes into Oden's life. Oden, despite having every woman in Wano vying for him, he chooses Toki, who had come from the past to present day, and she sails with Oden and Whitebeard, eventually creating a family while on the sea. This development of Toki and Oda's relationship I really loved. I found the yin and yang of Oden and Toki to be perfect. Oden, the brash and upfront individual, juxtaposed with the calm and intelligent Toki. Toki's introduction into the story also adds more mystery surrounding the world of devil fruits, as hers literally lets her travel through time itself. Toki mentions she had gone forth in time to Wano specifically, and although it isn't certain where she came from, it is entirely likely she came from the era of Joy Boy and knew that the second coming of Joy Boy would return eventually to Wano, and that being the case of Luffy. The mystery of what she could have known from long ago, in fact even during the Void Century, further adds to the shrouded past of the One Piece world as we know it. On Whitebeard's ship, we get more characters fleshed out, such as Marco, and we now know why Cat Viper went specifically to Marco to gain an ally and why he'd be so trusted from the mink. Additionally, Izu being part of Whitebeard's crew now makes so much sense retrospectively. I always questioned how Whitebeard gained a samurai on his ship, but now we know that Izu joined the crew after sailing alongside Whitebeard for years with Oden. A seemingly innocuous apprentice on the crew came aboard within Marshal D. Teach, and we see him beg on his knees to sail with Whitebeard. We know Teach has long since sought to find the Yami Yami no Mi, even at a young age, so it is entirely likely he knew that the best odds of finding it were with Whitebeard. This masterclass villain who has both faces of cowardice and brashful evil, we now see him as a kid with further mystery surrounded around him. We've always known the rivalry Whitebeard and Roger had, but we never go to see the extent of it until the flashback. Roger and Whitebeard arrive at the same island, and we see Oden attack Roger himself, delighted to fight once more. And despite Oden being a god of destruction, Roger brushes him off, and we truly witness just how powerful the Pirate King was. Roger and Whitebeard clash, and we can see the first instance of advanced Conqueror's Haki in which they clash with each other without directly touching, which develops the upper echelon of the Haki system further, and it shows us what is to come of our very own Monkey D. Luffy if he reaches the title of the Pirate King. Rayleigh's clash with Marco was also of god tier caliber, seeing the Dark King himself stop the first Commander Marco with merely a finger. All these characters who we had heard rumors of their grandiose status in their prime, we finally see fight. Roger, Whitebeard, Oden, and Rayleigh. This flashback of Oden wasn't just to shed light on Oden, but to show us the old era and add to the mystery of what the hell the One Piece is. After the clash, the two pirate groups celebrate, and we see young Shanks and Buggy as apprentices ask about Teach the apprentice on Whitebeard's ship, and Whitebeard's crew mentions that Teach has never once slept his entire life. I've seen theories all around about Teach having multiple people living within him, but obviously none of these things are answered now. But to never sleep makes you question the status of Blackbeard's humanity. Roger, Whitebeard, and Oden drink together, and Roger informs us that his sickness will kill him in about a year, and that he needs Oden to reach the One Piece due to Oden being able to read the poneglyphs. We see Gold D. Roger, the king of pirates, beg Whitebeard, something I thought we'd never see, all in the pursuit of him becoming the Pirate King and understanding what happened in this world. Whitebeard obliges, and for the next year we set sail around the Grand Line and encounter famed individuals like King Neptune, Tom, and even more. Eventually, after all their journeys, Oden and the Roger pirates reach the final island within Laugh Tale, which was dubbed that due to all of them laughing. Laugh Tale is once more a mystery. Why in the world were they laughing? And Roger states in fact right after Laugh Tale that he wishes he could have met Joy Boy. Again, we have no idea what Joy Boy's involvement was within the One Piece and how they know so much about him. It's likely due to the road poneglyphs and what they found on this last island, but at this time, Roger, Oden, and the crew figured out everything there is about this world. Amidst their travels in reaching Laugh Tale, they realized that they were too early. In fact, over 20 years too early, and Oden states that he needs to open up Wano for the return of Joy Boy. Again, Joy Boy is mentioned to have lived hundreds of years ago, but he is referred to in the present to come. I imagine this continues the trend of inherited will amongst One Piece, within Luffy carrying on Joy Boy's will and doing what Roger himself couldn't. The Sea Kings even discussed the birth of Shirahoshi, all adding to the culmination of events that would take place in the future, which shows us the audience that the climax of the story will soon take place before our very eyes. Through these events of Oden sailing around, we finally get some damn spotlight on Shanks, Roger, Rayleigh, and Whitebeard, and are left with far more questions than answers because the world of One Piece has been shaken up with us shown the events of the Golden Era. Oden's desire to travel was satiated, and he returned to Wano aiming to open up the land, only to find the land has been overtaken by Orochi, who held a grudge against the Kozuki family after the Kurozumi family was exiled and hunted down after their attempt of regicide. Orochi Kurozumi, the puppet shogun we now know the motivation of, and we see him manipulated by the older Kurozumi individuals who possess the clone fruit and Bartolomeo's barrier fruit. Oden returning to Wano in this state is full of rage, especially after hearing that Toki was attacked, and Oden, the man knowing everything of the world, knew he had to open up Wano by any cost necessary. And in one of my favorite scenes, with Oden, a normally jolly individual, now full of rage, tells Toki she must not know what he used to be, referring to his warlike state, and he charges into the capital to kill Orochi, only to be left empty-handed. Oden then danced in the streets weekly for 5 years, embarrassing himself and earning the scorn of the citizens, defiling his once grandiose status, all for the sake of protecting everyone within Wano. After 5 years had passed, and Oden realized that Orochi and Kaido's promise was a lie, it commences the pinnacle of the flashback. Oden and the Akazaya 9, all accepting the possibility of death, face off versus Kaido and his army. Oden, a man admired by the two strongest pirates alive, on equal grounding as them, faced off versus the King of Beast, and despite Kaido's immense power, Oden was able to stand toe-to-toe with him. Oden demonstrated an individual with Conqueror's Haki, fearing nothing, smiling, and never surrendering under any cost. In their final clash, Oden was tricked during the battle and as a result beaten, and I believe if he wasn't deceived, Oden could have actually killed Kaido. Following their defeat, it commences the legendary hour in which Oden further exemplifies why he is someone worth following. He survives in a boiling pot and keeps his retainers alive, and eventually frees them, telling them to open up Wano by any means necessary. In Oden's final exchange with Kaido, the words that have echoed in my mind transpire. Oden tells Kaido that he doesn't care if he's forgotten, that his spirit will live on. And before his death in Chad-like fashion, says Oden wouldn't be Oden if it wasn't boiled, and he dies with a smile on his face. The man who was hinted at for hundreds of episodes, admired by everyone, showed us the audience exactly why the samurai will go to any lengths to fulfill his dream. Through merely 16 episodes, he quickly became one of my favorite characters. Oden exemplifies an individual who was unchained, an individual who sought for the knowledge of all things, travel and adventure, who despite not vying for the throne was worthy of the throne and admired by all. His story shed light on the land of Wano, its history, the ups and downs, and how the balance of power was lost by the Kozuki family and fell into the hands of Kaido and Orochi. His endless yearning for adventure brought us to witness the old era at its peak, the pinnacle of these individuals understanding everything of this world, although they were slightly too early. Their findings suggest to us that the era that has been long awaited, the era of dawn that Toki mentioned, is in present-day Wano, with the Akazaya 9 ready to enact their revenge, and our pirates who have begrudgingly joined hands to take the head of Big Mom and Kaido. This flashback did leave us with more questions than answers, but it wouldn't be writing by Oda if we weren't always asking for more of this grandiose world he built and further left with more mystery. If you enjoyed this video on Oden and his flashback and all it's affected, please let me know in the comment section below, and if you haven't already, I do ask that you subscribe as it really does help out my channel, and let me know y'all are liking these kind of videos. As always, my friends, covering One Piece has quickly become my favorite thing to do on this channel, so thank you for your continued support from the bottom of my heart. As always, my friends, be greedier, and I will catch you all next time.